I figured out how I can splice the videos together. So we're going to continue reading because I want to get through the end of the orientation because the paging in this was kind of weird. It looked like it ended on page 29, but then it went on to 31. So we're going to go all the way through. Let's go on. The next chapter, the audio visual. In March of 1995, a limousine carrying Ted Koppel, the host of ABC TV's Nightline, pulled up to the snow-covered curb outside Morrie's house in West Newton, Massachusetts. That's also outside of Boston. Morrie was in a wheelchair full-time now, getting used to helpers lifting him like a heavy sack from the chair to the bed and the bed to the chair. He had begun to cough while eating, and chewing was a chore. His legs were dead. He would never walk again. Yet he refused to be depressed. Instead, Morrie had become a lightning rod of ideas. He jotted down his thoughts on yellow pads, envelopes, folders, scrap paper. He wrote bite-sized philosophies about living with death's shadow. This is a quote. Accept what you are able to do and what you are not able to do. Another. Accept the past as past without denying it or discarding it. And another. Learn to forgive yourself and to forgive others. I think of those two things, the first one's kind of the more difficult. Oh, okay. Next, don't assume that it's too late to get involved. After a while, he had more than 50 of these aphorisms, like the quotes I just read, which he shared with his friends. One friend, a fellow Brandeis professor named Morrie Stein, was so taken with the words that he sent them to a Boston Globe reporter who came out and wrote a long feature story on Morrie. The headline read, "A Professor's Final Course, His Own Death." The article caught the eye of a producer from the Nightline show, who brought it to Koppel in Washington, D.C. "Take a look at this," the producer said. Next thing you knew, there were cameramen in Morrie's living room, and Koppel's limousine was in front of the house. Several of Morrie's friends and family members had gathered to meet Koppel, and when the famous man entered the house, they buzzed with excitement. Well, all except Morrie, who wheeled himself forward, raised his eyebrows, and interrupted the clamor with his high, sing-song voice. "Ted, I need to check you out before I agree to do this interview." There was an awkward moment of silence. Then the two men were ushered into the study. The door was shut. "Man," one friend whispered outside the door, "I hope Ted goes easy on Morrie." "I hope Morrie goes easy on Ted," said the other. Inside the office, Morrie motioned for Koppel to sit down. He crossed his hands in his lap and smiled. "Tell me something close to your heart," Morrie began. My heart?" Koppel studied the old man. All right," he said cautiously, and he spoke about his children. They were close to his heart, weren't they? Good, Morrie said. Now, tell me something about your faith. Koppel was uncomfortable. I usually don't talk about such things with people I've only known a few minutes. Ted, I'm dying, Morrie said, peering over his glasses. I don't have a lot of time here. Koppel laughed. All right, faith. He quoted a passage from Marcus Aurelius, something he felt strongly about. Morrie nodded. Now, let me ask you something, Koppel said. Have you ever seen my program? Morrie shrugged. Twice, I think. Twice? That's all? Oh, don't feel bad. I've only seen Oprah once. Well, the 2 times you saw my show, what did you think? Morrie paused. To be honest? Yes? I thought you were a narcissist. Koppel burst into laughter. I'm too ugly to be a narcissist, he said. Soon the cameras were rolling in front of the living room fireplace, with Koppel in his crisp blue suit and Morrie in his shaggy gray sweater. He had refused fancy clothes or makeup for the interview. His philosophy was that death should not be embarrassing. He was not about to powder its nose. Because Morrie sat in the wheelchair, the camera never caught his withered legs. And because he was still able to move his hands, Morrie always spoke with both hands waving. He showed great passion when explaining how you face the end of life. Ted, he said, when all this started, I asked myself, am I going to withdraw from the world like most people do? Or am I going to live? I decided I'm going to live. Or at least try to live the way I want, with dignity, with courage, with humor, with composure. There are some mornings when I cry and mourn for myself. Some mornings I'm so angry and bitter. But it doesn't last too long. Then I get up and say, I want to live. So far, I've been able to do it. Will I be able to continue? I don't know. But I'm betting on myself that I will. Koppel seemed extremely taken with Morrie. He asked about the humility that death induced. Well, Fred, Morrie said accidentally. Then he quickly corrected himself. I mean, Ted. Now that's inducing humility, Koppel said, laughing. The 2 men spoke about the afterlife. They spoke about Morrie's increasing dependency on other people. He already needed help eating and sitting and moving from place to place. What, Koppel asked, did Morrie dread the most about his slow, insidious decay? Morrie paused. He asked if he could say this certain thing on television. Koppel said, go ahead. Morrie looked straight into the eyes of the most famous interviewer in America. Well, Ted, one day soon, someone's going to have to wipe my ass. I think you're supposed to laugh after this. The program aired on a Friday night. It began with Ted Koppel from behind the desk in Washington, his voice booming with authority. You'll have to look up Ted Koppel to see some of his stuff. "Who is Morrie Schwartz?" he said. "And why, by the end of the night, are so many of you going to care about him?" 1,000 miles away, in my house on the hill, I was casually flipping channels. I heard these words from the TV set. "Who is Morrie Schwartz?" And went numb. It is our first class together in the spring of 1976. I guess this is a flashback, by the way. I enter Morrie's large office and notice the seemingly countless books that line the wall, shelf to shelf, or shelf after shelf, sorry. Books on sociology, philosophy, religion, psychology. There is a large rug on the hardwood floor and a window that looks out on the campus walk. Only a dozen or so students are there, fumbling with notebooks and syllabi. Most of them wear jeans and earth shoes and plaid flannel shirts. I tell myself it will not be easy to cut a class this small. Maybe I shouldn't take it. "Mitchell," Morrie says, reading from the attendance list. I raise my hand. "Do you prefer Mitch, or is Mitchell better?" I have never been asked this by a teacher. I do a double take at this guy in his yellow turtleneck and green corduroy pants, the silver hair that falls on his forehead. He is smiling. "Mitch," I say. "Mitch is what my friends call me." "Well, Mitch it is then," Morrie says, as if closing a deal. "And Mitch?" "Yes? I hope that one day you will think of me as your friend." Okay, end of the flashback. Now we're on to the next chapter, the orientation. As I turned the rental car onto Morrie's Street in West Newton, a quiet suburb of Boston, I had a cup of coffee in one hand and a cellular phone between my ear and shoulder. That's what they used to call cell phones, is cellular phones. My eyes jumped from the digital clock, my return flight was in a few hours, to the mailbox numbers on the tree-lined suburban street. The car radio was on, the all-news station. This was how I operated. 5 things at once. Hold on. Roll back the tape, I said to the producer. "Let me hear that part again." "Okay," he said. "It's gonna take a second." Suddenly, I was upon the house. I pushed the brakes, spilling coffee in my lap. As the car stopped, I caught a glimpse of a large Japanese maple tree and 3 figures sitting near it in the driveway. A young man and a middle-aged woman flanking a small old man in a wheelchair. Morrie. At the sight of my old professor, I froze. "Hello?" the producer said in my ear. "Did I lose you?" I had not seen him in 16 years. His hair was thinner, nearly white, and his face was gaunt. You need to look that word up if you don't know what gaunt means. I suddenly felt unprepared for this reunion. For one thing, I was stuck on the phone, and I hoped that he hadn't noticed my arrival so that I could drive around the block a few more times, finish my business, and get mentally ready. But Morrie, this new, withered version of a man I had once known so well, was smiling at the car, hands folded in his lap, waiting for me to emerge. "Hey," the producer said again, "are you there?" For all the time we'd spent together, for all the kindness and patience Morrie had shown me when I was young, I should have dropped the phone and jumped from the car, run and held him and kissed him hello. Instead, I killed the engine and sunk down off the seat as if I were looking for something. Yeah, I'm here, I whispered, and continued my conversation with the TV producer until we were finished. I did what I had become best at doing. I tended to my work, even while my dying professor waited on his front lawn. I'm not proud of this, but this is what I did. Now, 5 minutes later, Morrie was hugging me, his thinning hair rubbing against my cheek. I had told him I was searching for my keys. That's what had taken me so long in the car. And I squeezed him tighter, as if I could crush my little lie. Okay, I'm going to say that again because I don't think I read it very, very clearly. So, let me go back. I had told him I was searching for my keys. That's what had taken me so long in the car. And I squeezed him tighter, as if I could crush my little lie. Although the spring sunshine was warm, he wore a windbreaker and his legs were covered by a blanket. He smelled faintly sour, the way people on medication sometimes do. With his face pressed close to mine, I could hear his labored breathing in my ear. "My old friend," he whispered, "you've come back at last." He rocked against me, not letting go, his hands reaching up for my elbows as I bent over him. I was surprised at such affection after all these years. But then, in the stone walls I had built between my present and my past, I had forgotten how close we once were. I remembered graduation day, the briefcase, his tears at my departure, and I swallowed because I knew, deep down, that I was no longer the good, gift-bearing student he remembered. I only hoped that, for the next few hours, I could fool him. Inside the house, we sat at a walnut dining room table near a window that looked out on the neighbor's house. Morrie fussed with his wheelchair, trying to get comfortable. As was his custom, he wanted to feed me, and I said, "All right." One of the helpers, a stout Italian woman named Connie, cut up bread and tomatoes and brought containers of chicken salad, hummus, and tabbouleh. She also brought some pills. Morrie looked at them and sighed. Ugh. His eyes were more sunken than I remembered them, and his cheekbones more pronounced. This gave him a harsher, older look. Until he smiled, of course, and the sagging cheeks gathered up like curtains. "Mitch," he said softly, "you know that I'm dying." I knew. "All right, then." Morrie swallowed the pills, put down the paper cup, inhaled deeply, then let it out. "Shall I tell you what it's like?" "What it's like? To die?" "Yes," he said. "Although I was unaware of it. Our last class had just begun. Okay, now we're doing another flashback thing. I'm figuring out how this book is written. So it must end with a flashback at the end of every chapter. We'll see how it plays out. Okay, here's the flashback. It was my freshman year. Morrie is older than most of the teachers, and I am younger than most of the students, having left high school a year early. To compensate for my youth on campus, I wear old gray sweatshirts and box in a local gym and walk around with an unlit cigarette in my mouth, even though I do not smoke. I drive a beat-up Mercury Cougar with the windows down and the music up. I seek my identity in toughness, but it is Morrie's softness that draws me. And because he does not look at me as a kid trying to be something more than I am, I relax. I finish that first course with him and enroll for the next. He is an easy marker. He doesn't much care for grades. One year, they say, during the Vietnam War, Morrie gave all his male students A's to help them keep their student deferments. I begin to call Morrie Coach, the way I used to address my high school track coach. Morrie likes this nickname. Coach, he says. All right, I'll be your coach, and you can be my player. You can play all the lovely parts of life that I'm too old for now. Sometimes we eat together in the cafeteria. Morrie, to my delight, is even more of a slob than I am. He talks instead of chewing, laughs with his mouth open, delivers a passionate thought through a mouthful of egg salad, with little yellow pieces spewing from his teeth. But it cracks me up. The whole time I know him, I have two overwhelming desires: to hug him and to give him a napkin. Okay, so that's all for today. I have spliced, by this point, I've spliced all the first three readings together. Remember the challenge. I want you to now write down 5 words that come to mind when you're thinking about what you've read up to this point. And I'm going to share mine on the Google Drive document that accompanies this on YouTube. The other thing I was going to mention is that the reason that I avoided this book for so long is 1999 is the year that my father passed away. And so I had bought this just before he was hospitalized. So the last thing I wanted to do after he passed on was to read a book about someone passing on. My dad was in the hospital for 3 weeks. And I thank God that it was only 3 weeks. He had cancer, and he wasn't someone that took pain very well. Now, I'm not talking about him being like a wimp or anything like that, because he was a strong man. But like whenever he had a cold, he was miserable to be around, which was hardly ever. He was always healthy. I don't remember him ever having the flu, but I do remember him having colds sometimes. And so when he got ill and he was hospitalized, I was like, man, how is he gonna deal with this? He was very brave, and it was a long 3 weeks. I'm going to end it with that, and I'm going to ask you, did you happen to notice when you were investigating the book, because we're doing a book study, that the author didn't capitalize Tuesday or Tuesdays, but he did capitalize Morrie. Why do you think that's so? Yes, that's part of your challenge. You have to kind of consider this. Why did he not capitalize Tuesdays, but he did capitalize Morrie? Any other things that you've noticed as you've been investigating the book? Note those as well. So you could probably put those underneath a heading like interesting tidbits or discoveries or what have you. Okay, so I will see you on the next reading. And the next reading we will do, I really haven't even looked at the chapters to see how long they are, but let's just say we're going to do the next 3 to 4 chapters. And I will not be reading page numbers so much as I will the titles of the chapters. Okay, until next time, do better and be better. Or be better by doing better, or you get it.